The wind was howling outside my father's lakeside estate in northern Maine. But nothing compared to the storm I was walking into. The house stood tall and angular, a structure of glass and cold stone just like him. I hadn't been back in 5 years. Not since I packed a single suitcase and boarded a plane to Guatemala, trading boardrooms and briefings for makeshift clinics and rural medicine. That was me, Elena Monroe. The daughter who walked away. The one who gave up Monroe Vitalis. The billion-dollar medical empire. For a stethoscope and an idea that healing meant more than profit. My father never forgave me for that. Now, I stood at the edge of the dining room, where floor-to-ceiling windows reflected candlelight off crystal glasses and silver cutlery. Everyone was already seated, my younger brother Lucas, in his tailored navy suit. My stepmother Victoria, with her signature diamond choker. And my father, Richard Monroe, at the head of the table like a king, awaiting the coronation of his heir. No one looked up when I entered. "Miss Monroe," said a gray-haired man I didn't recognize. Probably the family's new estate attorney. "We weren't expecting you." I smiled politely. "Good thing I'm not here to be expected." Lucas' jaw tightened. My father glanced at his Rolex and let out a sigh. "Well," he said flatly, "let's not drag this out." He reached beneath the table and retrieved a heavy leather envelope. He slid it toward Lucas. "Congratulations, son," he said. "You've earned it." Lucas took the envelope, fingers barely trembling. But he didn't look at me. I didn't breathe. "That," my father continued, "is the deed to this estate. The controlling shares of Monroe Vitalis, all offshore accounts and board voting rights. It's time the future of this family went to someone who understands it." I tried to speak, but nothing came out. "You think I didn't notice?" he said coldly, finally meeting my eyes. "You left this family, this company, this legacy, for what some mission in the jungle I was healing people." I said softly, "You were hiding." He snapped, "Because you never had what it takes." My stepmother shifted uncomfortably. Lucas swallowed hard. Even the lawyer looked like he wanted to crawl under the antique rug. "I invited you out of courtesy," my father said. "Not sentiment. Don't mistake the two. I didn't come for sentiment." I replied, "I came for truth." He laughed. "Truth. The truth is, Elena, you were never meant to lead this family." And just like that, I was 10 years old again. Small, unwanted, dismissed. But I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I sat down, steady, folding my hands in my lap. Because the storm outside was nothing compared to the one building in my chest, and it wasn't over yet. The silence after my father's words was suffocating. Even the crackle of the fireplace seemed to hesitate. Lucas adjusted his cufflinks, still refusing to meet my eyes. My stepmother Victoria reached for her wine glass like it was a lifeline. I stared at the thick envelope now in Lucas's hands, the culmination of 3 generations of work. Now passed to a man whose idea of leadership was trimming departments to boost margins and calling it efficiency. My fingers curled in my lap. I could feel the pressure behind my temples, the tightness in my throat. But I said nothing, because silence had always been my weapon. It was the only thing that couldn't be twisted or used against me. Then, my father turned to me, coldly amused. "You look surprised," he said. "I'm not," I replied. My voice steady, just reminded of what he sneered. "That in this family," I said, "proximity is mistaken for loyalty." Lucas stayed close. So you thought he cared. But you never asked what he did when you weren't watching. Lucas's eyes flicked toward me. A flash of something fear, he recovered quickly. She's always been like this, he said, forcing a laugh. Dramatic. Emotional. Remember when she wanted to turn the oncology wing into a healing garden? My father smirked. A waste of square footage. I kept my eyes on Lucas. At least I never treated people like numbers. Victoria cleared her throat. Maybe this isn't the time, but my father was already waving her off. No. Let her speak. Let her get it out of her system. I stood up slowly. You say I walked away. But you never asked why? You never asked what it cost me. It cost you nothing. He spat. You left of your own accord. You chose some fantasy over family. No, I said. I chose humanity over control. There's a difference. The attorney, Mr. Grayson. His name was shifted uncomfortably. Mr. Monroe, he said carefully. Before we proceed with the formal transfers, there is one additional matter we need to address. My father frowned. What matter, Mr.? Grayson opened his leather briefcase and pulled out a thin envelope. Yellowed at the edges. This, he said, is a sealed amendment to the Monroe Family Trust. Filed 6 years ago. My father narrowed his eyes. Filed by whom? By your late mother, Mrs. Eleanor Monroe. For a moment, the room stilled. Even the wind outside seemed to pause. My breath caught. Grandma Eleanor. She had always been the only one who truly saw me. The only one who said things like, still, waters run deep. Darling, and some storms start from silence. My father scoffed. My mother had no authority to amend anything. She did. Mr. Grayson said calmly. She retained 51% of the original founding shares in Monroe Vitalis. She exercised her right to make this amendment as part of her final estate planning. And, see ya? You never contested it. Lucas sat back in his chair. Stiff. Victoria's diamond pendant caught the light as she froze mid-sip. My father's face twitched. Let me see that document. Mr. Grayson didn't move. As per her instructions, this envelope is to be read aloud in full. In the presence of all primary family stakeholders, only if an attempt was made to disinherit Mrs. Gain. Elena Monroe. My heart skipped. My palms went cold again. I wasn't prepared. Not for this. She really, I whispered. She saw this coming. Mr. Grayson looked at me. Would you like me to read it? I swallowed hard. Yes. Please. He broke the seal with slow precision, unfolding the letter inside like it was a map to something long buried. And for the first time since I walked into that room, the balance began to shift. Mr. Grayson unfolded the parchment with the care of someone handling a relic. The air in the room felt charged, like static just before lightning. He cleared his throat and began. To be read only in the event that my granddaughter, Elena Monroe, is denied her place in the family's legacy either by omission, slight, or formal disinheritance. Eleanor Monroe, founder and 51% shareholder of Monroe Vitalis, declare the following, if such exclusion occurs. I hereby transfer all of my voting rights and control over the Monroe family estate and holdings directly to Elena Monroe, effective immediately upon activation of this clause. Lucas's hand went limp. The envelope slid from his fingers and fell to the floor with a soft, Disgraceful thud. Mr. Grayson continued reading. Unwavering. This amendment shall override any previous transfer, agreement, or verbal promise made to any other party. My decision is final, and was witnessed and notarized in accordance with state law. I make this not out of sentiment, but belief. Belief in Elena's capacity to lead with integrity, to protect what her father has forgotten, and to restore what her brother will never understand. This company was never meant to be a machine for profit. It was born to heal. And healing requires heart. Silence. Thick. Electric. Unmovable. Even the rain tapping on the glass seemed to stop. Like the weather itself held its breath. My father's knuckles were white around the arms of his chair. His face frozen not in anger, but disbelief. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Lucas looked stunned. His face had gone pale. His jaw worked but produced nothing. Victoria looked at me as if seeing a ghost. I didn't move. I couldn't, because for the first time in my life, someone had stood up for me in this room. Someone who wasn't afraid to say I mattered not because of what I earned, but because of who I was when no one was looking. Mr. Grayson looked up. Miss Monroe, he said gently. Per this document, you now hold the majority voting control over Monroe Vitalis and associated family estates. I heard him. I understood every word. But it took a few seconds before I could actually breathe. I said quietly. I wasn't expecting that. No one was. My father muttered. His voice sharp again. Recovering. This is absurd. Mr. Grayson remained calm. Legally binding. Witnessed by 2 notaries and filed with the state 6 years ago. You're telling me my own mother did this, behind my back, my father snapped. She didn't do it behind your back, I said. She did it after watching what you became. He stared at me then. Truly stared, not as a child. Not as some emotional nuisance, but as a rival. Lucas stood. This isn't fair. I've been here. I stayed. I worked with Dad. You played his game, I said. My voice quiet but steady. You mirrored what he wanted to see. My father stood too. You can't possibly think you're qualified to run this company. You've been gone. You don't understand the board. The numbers. The markets. I understand, people. I cut in. And that's what this company forgot. His face turned red. You don't get to walk in here, and I didn't walk in here, I said. I was summoned by a letter that changed everything. By someone who saw through all of this before it could collapse. Mr. Grayson interrupted. Shall we proceed with transferring the records and updating the control logs? I took a breath. Heart pounding. Yes, I said finally. Let's begin. And with that, everything shifted. The transfer was done in less than 30 minutes. Signatures. Initials. A flurry of notarized stamps and digital authorizations. And just like that, a billion-dollar empire changed hands, not through a boardroom vote or courtroom battle, but through the quiet authority of a dead woman's will. Lucas stared out the window, stiff as the marble columns framing it. Victoria paced behind his chair, her diamond pendant catching every flicker of firelight like a nervous metronome. My father hadn't said a word in 10 minutes. Mr. Grayson handed me the final document and closed his briefcase with a quiet click. It's official, he said. Effective immediately. I didn't look at him. My eyes stayed on my father, who was still seated, still trying to understand what just happened. I didn't want this, I said softly. He looked up sharp. Bitter. Of course you did. Why else would you come back? I came back because something felt wrong, I replied. Because even from halfway across the world, I could feel it. The rot, the shift, the silence in the reports, the names I didn't recognize anymore. You're just like her, he muttered. My mother. Always watching. Always judging. No, I said. I'm not here to judge. I'm here to rebuild. Lucas laughed under his breath. And what do you think you're going to do? Elena preach. Empathy in the boardroom, hug the shareholders into submission. I'm not here for war. I replied, calmly. I'm here to end it. My father stood slowly. You're naive. No, I said. I'm not naive. I'm tired. Tired of watching something that was built to heal be turned into a machine for leverage and fear. He stepped closer. You think you can just walk in and erase 20 years of decisions? I don't want to erase them. I said, I want to understand them. Then I want to fix what's broken. Lucas finally turned to face me. His face was tight, but his voice was low. You think the board will follow you? They've only ever known 2 names, Richard and Lucas. They'll learn mine, I said. His eyes narrowed. You think you're better than us? No, I replied. I think I'm different from you. And maybe that's what we need now. Victoria spoke. Finally. You can't just change everything overnight? I don't intend to, I said. But change is coming. It has to. Not for revenge. Not for control. For restoration. The words seemed to land differently. Restoration. Not dominance. Not conquest. Something older. Something deeper. Mister? Grayson stepped beside me, offering a leather folder. If you like. Miss. Munru. I'll begin updating the board and filing the formal notices. Not yet, I said. I'd like to walk the building first. Alone. Mister. Grayson hesitated. Of course. I turned to my father one last time. I didn't come back to steal anything. I came because you left something behind. And I couldn't let it rot in silence. He didn't answer. Just watched me as if I were speaking in a language he no longer understood. As I stepped out of the room, Folder and Hunt, I could feel their eyes on my back. But for the first time, I wasn't carrying shame. I was carrying responsibility. The building hadn't changed glass facade. Clean concrete lines. Security desk staffed by the same man who once called me kiddo when I used to tag along with my father as a teenager. But everything else had. The air inside felt colder. The lobby, once filled with patient advocacy posters and wellness program art, now gleamed with sterile steel and minimalist furniture. It looked like it belonged to a hedge fund, not a healthcare empire. I didn't announce myself. I walked slowly through the corridors, letting my heels echo on the tile floors. Eyes followed me quick. Cautious glances before snapping back to monitors. Conversations cut off the moment I passed by. Smiles flickered and died. Not a single welcome back. Not even a good morning. They didn't know who I was anymore. Or worse, they did. And they didn't know how to act around me. When I passed the 3rd floor, I stepped into the break room. It was quiet. Too quiet. A group of employees, maybe 5 or 6, sat stiffly at a table with half-eaten sandwiches, clearly in mid-conversation before I arrived. Please, I said gently. You don't have to stop on my account. They all stood. One woman, a janitor in a faded Navy uniform, looked unsure. "We're not supposed to sit when Mr. Lucas is in the building," she said carefully. He blinked. "You think I'm going to punish you for eating?" The woman gave a small shrug. Not meeting my eyes, I walked to the fridge, opened it, pulled out a water bottle, and leaned against the counter. "What's your name, Rosa?" she said. "Been here 28 years. Then you know the company better than I do," I said. That made her glance up. One of the younger men at the table, maybe mid-20s, clipboard still in hand, shifted uncomfortably. "We were just on break," he offered quickly. "Just 5 minutes. You don't need to justify taking a break," I said. The human body isn't designed to run on spreadsheets and panic. That earned me a tiny laugh. Just one, but it cracked the silence. I looked around. "What happened here?" Rosa tilted her head. "Happened? This place used to feel alive," I said. "It used to breathe. Now it feels like it's holding its breath." No one answered, because the answer was obvious. Fear. It clung to the walls like mold. Quiet. Invasive. Hard to name until it poisoned everything. I left them to finish lunch and made my way upstairs to an unused office. My name wasn't on the door. No plaque. No title. Just a key card. Inside, the desk was clean. The chair still wrapped in plastic. I sat down, opened the laptop the assistant had left on the desk, and started reading. Hours passed. Report after report. Memo after memo. They told a quiet, damning story departments that hadn't communicated in 6 months. Budgets shifted without explanation. Performance reviews templated and unsigned. Emails flagged. Escalated and ignored. This wasn't mismanagement. It was decay. Strategic silencing. Loyalty by fear. By the time evening shadows crept across the windows, I'd found something worse. A list of employees who had raised ethical concerns and been terminated within 60 days. The pattern was undeniable, and I knew exactly who had pulled the strings. Lucas hadn't just run this company. He'd ruled it. Not like a CEO. Like a king. And the company, my family's legacy, had become his kingdom of silence. It began with a headline. Elena Monroe accused of fraud in international charity scandal. Then came the subtext. Sources allege misappropriation of donor funds during her overseas work. Internal Monroe family dispute linked to sudden power transfer. Healer or hustler? I stared at the screen. The article was vague, all accusation. No substance but dressed in enough suggestive language to spark fire. It was built to inflame, not inform. Then came the notifications. My phone vibrated nonstop. Emails poured in. PR alerts. Shareholder concerns. Media requests. My assistant forwarded a message from the board. Urgent meeting request. Reputation damage control. The attack was calculated. Precise. Timed for maximum chaos. And I knew exactly who had pulled the strings. Lucas. He didn't even have to be in the building. His fingerprints were everywhere. I stood at the window, watching the city skyline blur in the rain. My reflection stared back sharp cheekbones, tired eyes, a mouth pressed too tightly. I didn't look like a leader. I looked like someone unraveling. There was a knock at the door. Rosa. She held a paper cup in her hand. Chamomile, she said softly. Good for shock. You didn't have to bring that, I whispered. You look like you needed it. She stepped inside, set the cup down, then slowly lowered herself into the chair across from me. When I was let go 15 years ago, she began, no one brought me anything. Not a cup of tea. Not a box to pack my things. Nothing. I swallowed hard. I didn't know. Of course you didn't. You weren't here. But your grandmother was. She found me in the parking lot. Gave me my job back. Asked me one question. Did you speak the truth? I said nothing. My throat burned. Rosa leaned in. You look like someone trying to do the right thing in a place that's forgotten what right even means. I feel like I'm drowning. I admitted. Everyone is turning. The board. The press. I haven't even had time to lead. And already they're calling for blood. She gave a slow nod. That's because they smell fear. And fear is contagious. What if Lucas is right? I asked. What if I don't have the spine for this? She held my gaze. Miss Helena, you're the first person in years to ask how the janitor was doing. I let out a shaky breath. This company doesn't need another idealist. It needs stability. No, Rosa said gently. It needs a healer. It needs someone who remembers what it was supposed to be. I looked at her, eyes burning. Why are you helping me? Because someone once helped me when no one else did, she said. And because this place doesn't need another king. She reached into her pocket, pulled out a folded paper, and slid it across the desk. What's this? I asked. Names, she said. Of people who were pushed out for asking questions. I opened the paper. 12 names? All familiar. All gone. They deserve a chance to come back, Rosa said softly. Just like I did. I stared at the list, hands trembling. The knock came again, this time harder. My assistant. Miss Monroe. The board is waiting. I nodded slowly. Tell them I'll be there in 5. As the door closed, I looked down at the cup of tea. Now lukewarm. I didn't drink it, but I held it tight, because for the first time all day, I didn't feel completely alone. The boardroom was colder than I remembered. Not in temperature, but in tension. 12 people. Polished. Measured. Eyes sharp as spreadsheets. These weren't the scientists. The clinicians. The early idealists who once sat here with my grandmother. These were strategists. Market minds. Profit-driven architects of the empire. They didn't rise when I entered. Just a few nods. One cleared his throat. Another checked their phone. At the far end of the table sat Mr. Halpern, a retired member who'd come back in advisory capacity. I remembered him from my childhood. He used to bring jelly beans to shareholder meetings. Now he looked like a man watching a ship take on water. I took the empty seat at the head of the table. My seat. Now. It still didn't feel like it belonged to me. I know what you've heard. I began. Voice even. And I won't waste your time pretending none of it matters. The headlines are loud. The accusations louder. No reaction. But I'm not here to argue with gossip. I'm here to speak plainly. And I'm here to show you something. I opened my leather folder and pulled out 3 documents. Originals pulled from the legacy server my grandmother had insisted never be deleted. The first was a full audit, unredacted, of 3 subsidiary departments Lucas had overseen. I placed it in the center of the table. Unaudited budgets. No paper trail for internal transfers. Contractors with falsified addresses. The second was a timeline, dates matched to resignations and terminations of whistleblowers. Every person who raised concern was gone within 2 months. No cause documented. No HR process followed. And the last a grainy screenshot from security footage. Lucas entering a restricted server room at 2:03 a.m. The night before, the leaked documents about me appeared online. I looked around. I didn't come to destroy my brother. I came to repair what he broke. Silence. Then a murmur. One of the younger board members, Patel, I think, leaned forward. This footage. How recent is it? 10 days ago. I said. Thema stumped. Cross-verified. Halpern tapped his pen against the table. Are you pressing charges? No, I said. Not yet. That's not why I'm here. This isn't about punishment. A scoff came from my left. Then what is it about? I exhaled slowly. It's about restoration, I said. About returning this company to its purpose. When this company was founded, it was about care, dignity, access. We weren't built to be a fortress of leverage. We were built to heal. Stillness. Then Halpern cleared his throat. I doubted you. Elena. He admitted. I thought you were just another idealist, dragging sentiment into a shark tank. But today, you reminded me why this place mattered to people. Patel nodded. Another board member followed. No applause. No declarations. Just something quieter. Shift. They weren't defending me, but they were listening. And that was the first step back. I didn't fire anyone. Not that first week. Not even Lucas' closest lieutenant. Instead, I listened. I walked the halls. I sat in lunchrooms. I knocked on doors, even ones that hadn't been opened in months. I asked one question over and over again. What did this company used to mean to you? Some didn't answer at all. Some looked at me like I was baiting them into a trap. But a few started to speak. A nurse in the claims division told me she used to be proud to wear her badge at the grocery store. A systems analyst confessed that he used to believe in what we were building until bonuses got linked to loyalty. Not ethics. An HR manager, eyes brimming with exhaustion, admitted she'd been told never to question terminations, just rubber stamp them. The picture came into focus. This wasn't just a broken system. It was a broken spirit. So I changed the first rule. Nobody gets punished for speaking. I held a town hall in the lower atrium, no stage. No microphone. No PowerPoint. Just me. Standing on the same floor as everyone else. I don't have a 10-point plan. I said, I have one. We will restore the soul of this place. And we will do it together. Not because of PR. Not because it looks good on paper. But because we forgot who we are. They didn't clap, but they stayed. And that was more than enough. Later that afternoon, I called Rosa into my office. I want you to help me with something, I said. She blinked. You want the janitor to help write policy. I want the person who never stopped seeing people as people. She smiled. All right. Then, together, we finalized the letter. It wasn't flashy. No promises of rehiring or bonuses. Just honesty. Dear employee name, we failed you. We didn't listen when you spoke up. We didn't protect you when you were vulnerable. We made silence the cost of survival. That ends now. If you are willing, we'd like to invite you to speak again. No conditions. No questions. Just the chance to return, rebuild, and be heard. With respect, Elena Monroe. We sent out 12 letters that day. By morning, 5 responses had already come in, and every one of them said the same thing. I never thought anyone would ask me back. This wasn't about correcting the numbers. It was about restoring something we'd forgotten how to measure: trust. He didn't knock. Lucas never did. He just walked into my office like he still owned it, like the paint hadn't dried on the title shift. Like his name was still stitched into every wall of this building. He stood there, arms crossed, eyes scanning the room, like he was memorizing how it felt to be locked out. "You've made a mess," he said. I didn't look up from my paperwork. "Good morning to you, too. You think rehiring rejects and sipping tea with janitors is going to fix this place. I think they remember what this place was before you turned it into a fortress," I said calmly. He laughed short. "Bitter. You don't get it. Do you? This company was surviving. We were stable. You were silent." I replied. "There's a difference." Lucas stepped closer. "Why are you doing this? You already have control. You already humiliated Dad. What more do you want?" I finally looked at him. "I don't want to win. Lucas, I want to heal what you broke." He blinked, like he hadn't expected that. "I'm not here to destroy you," I said. "I'm here because for too long, this company has been defined by power and fear. That ends now." He scoffed. "You think a few speeches and a sympathy parade make you a leader? No," I said. "But listening does. And so does telling the truth." Lucas slammed a folder down on my desk. "Do you know what this is?" he snapped. I opened it slowly. Inside, doctored spreadsheets. Misrepresented financials. Photos of me overseas. Spliced with captions taken out of context. He smiled coldly. "Evidence. Or enough of it to convince the press you're a fraud." "You think you're safe now?" I stared at the papers. Then at him. "This is how far you'd go?" I asked. "You'd fabricate lies to hold on to something you already lost." His jaw tightened. "You were never supposed to be here. You were the dreamer. The soft one. The charity case." I stood up. "And you?" I asked. "The loyal one, the obedient son who burned bridges just to be seen." He didn't answer. "You thought I left because I was weak," I said. "But I left because I couldn't breathe in this place. Because I didn't want to become what you became." Which is what he asked. Eyes narrowing. "Hungry," I said. "So hungry to be seen that you forgot how to see anyone else." The silence between us was thick. "Hot. You're going to regret this," he said finally. "No," I said. "You will. Not because you lost, but because you never knew what winning actually meant." Lucas turned to leave, then paused. "I wanted to matter," he said. Barely a whisper. "You always had that. The way people looked at you. Grandma. Even Dad. In his own twisted way. I let that land. I didn't have anything handed to me. Lucas," I said. "I had to leave everything to figure out who I was. Maybe you never had that chance." He looked over his shoulder. "This place is going to eat you alive." "No," I said. "It already did. But I survived it. And now I'm rebuilding it." Lucas didn't respond. He walked out without another word. And for the first time since I came back, I didn't feel like I had to prove anything. Because truth doesn't scream. It just stands. And waits. He came on a Sunday. No appointment. No assistant. No performance. Just him. Richard Monroe standing in the doorway of my office like a man who didn't know what to do with his hands anymore. I looked up from the operations report I was annotating. It had been 3 weeks since Lucas walked out. 2 weeks since the media finally printed a retraction. 1 week since we hired back the first of the whistleblowers. The building was starting to breathe again. And now? This? I had to see it. My father said. See what I asked quietly. That you didn't burn it all down. I said nothing. He stepped in slowly, moving like someone who wasn't sure he belonged in the room anymore. In a way, he didn't. He held something in his hand, a photo. I recognized it immediately. 12-year-old me, covered in paint from a hospital mural I'd insisted on finishing myself. Grandma was beside me, mid-laugh, holding a brush upside down on purpose to make me giggle. She said you'd change this family. My father murmured. I didn't want to believe her. Why not? Because if she was right about you. He paused, voice tight. Then maybe she was wrong about me. I let that sit. I didn't want to shame him. I didn't want vengeance. Just honesty. She wasn't wrong about either of us. I said. He looked at me, really looked. For the first time in my adult life. His eyes didn't hold judgment. Just age. And regret. I came to say something. He said, still holding the photo like it might break. Something I should have said a long time ago. I waited. I'm sorry. Helena. The words hit like quiet thunder. Not dramatic. Not cinematic. Just real. Simple. Raw. Maybe the strongest thing you can say after a lifetime of silence is simply, I'm sorry. I nodded. Thank you. We sat like that for a moment. Just breathing. Then he placed the photo gently on my desk and stood. I don't expect anything. I just needed you to know. I looked at him. Then don't disappear again. If you mean it, fix what you can. Start somewhere. He gave a slight nod. I'll try. As he walked out, I noticed something else, the way his shoulders dipped. No longer squared with pride, but softened by something heavier than failure. Humility. 2 days later, Rosa walked into my office with a file folder in hand. What's this? I asked. A transfer receipt, she said. Anonymous. 7-figure donation to the women's shelter you used to work for. Made in your name. I opened the file. No sender. No message. Just a silent signature in the form of kindness. And somehow, I knew. My father hadn't sent flowers. Hadn't written letters. But he'd done something harder. He had listened. And finally, he had changed. Lucas never returned to the boardroom. But one afternoon, 6 weeks after he'd walked out, I got a text from a number I hadn't saved. Coffee. I hesitated. Then typed back, one condition? We don't talk about the company. He replied, deal. We met at a Kiet cafe tucked between 2 bookstores downtown. No suits. No tension. Just 2 siblings sitting across a wobbly table, sipping bitter coffee and trying to remember how to speak to each other without needing a defense. No apologies. No blame. Just breathing space. Maybe that was enough. He didn't say he was sorry. I didn't ask. Some healing arrives in silence. Some forgiveness is quiet. Acceptance that things will never return to what they were, and maybe that's the point. We're not meant to return. We're meant to rebuild. Back at the office, everything had changed, but nothing looked flashy. There were no gold plaques. No rebranded slogans. Just warmer lights. Softer voice. Slower steps in the hall. People talked again. Laughed in the break room. Shared ideas without fear. That was the true shift. Not the policy reforms or the new performance system, but the air, the trust, the soul of the place. One morning, Rosa brought in the old compass. the one my grandmother had left for me. I had locked it away in a drawer after that long week of press attacks and board suspicion. "Put it where people can see it," she said. "That's your north." So I placed it on a small stand in the reception area, right by the Monroe Vitalis sign, not as a monument, but as a reminder that we find our way not through power, but through alignment, through values, through kindness. Months passed. We sent out more letters. More people returned. We didn't ask them to forget. We simply invited them to continue. One day, as I walked past a newly redesigned hallway with portraits of past founders, I saw someone had added a photo of Grandma. No label, just her standing barefoot in the old lobby, laughing with a clipboard under her arm. I smiled. Some legacies aren't carved in stone. They ripple quietly, through culture, through choices, through people who carry the lesson forward, even when the teacher is gone. Now, when I walk into the boardroom, I don't hear silence. I hear footsteps. Real footsteps. People who believe in something again. And every time I feel doubt creeping in, I remember this. I didn't win because I was louder. I didn't win because I was stronger. I endured. I listened. I stayed soft in a world that told me to be steel. And somehow, that softness, that quiet strength built something no title ever could. So if you're listening to this and you've ever been underestimated, ever been told you weren't enough, or that your kindness made you weak, hear me now. You don't have to become them to prove them wrong. You just have to hold the line. And sometimes, the quietest people leave the loudest legacies